being here in the afternoon and still awake. Let me get very quickly into it and ask you a straightforward question. So basic income or universal basic income is the idea of giving everybody cash, right? Unconditionally. How many of you would support the idea of taxing everybody, however rich or poor, an equal amount of money every month? A per head tax. There's one gentleman there. Is there anybody else who would like to support it doesn't matter. Tax for all of the same amount, just the inverse of a basic income, a basic, universal basic tax or a poll tax. Whatever, 1,000 rupees a month? 1,000 rupees a month? Yes. Okay, so there's a saying in many fields that prevention is worth more than a cure. And if you go to, like, for instance, health, you look at trying to preventive medicine, or you go to electricity where you can either build more power plants or do demand side management. My proposition to you is that instead of paying out basic income, can we look at places where we are actually being taxed equally, everybody? And I'm sure all of you all are really surprised because none of you all have paid such a tax, but all of you all actually have. So let me explain. I come from Goa. The Goa Foundation is really the main entity behind the work I've done, and we work on environment. And in Goa, mining is the single biggest issue with the environment. I joined Goa Foundation a few years ago because I came from an anti-corruption standpoint, because mining, again, is the biggest source of corruption in Goa. And every single social movement in Goa was floundering because the votes were being purchased and then the politicians did whatever they felt like. So anyway, we've come down to, so over time, we've developed a new proposition in Goa on mining. And let me just lay it out for you in 5 simple principles that we've identified. The first principle is that the state is the owner of natural resources, but only as a trustee for the people and future generations. This is actually a legal principle. It's called the public trust doctrine. But it's generally obvious. It's like we all own the minerals. I mean, none of us created it, and none of us have got any special right over it. That's principle 1. Principle 2 is that we've inherited the minerals. Now, clearly, none of us have gone out and made these minerals, and nor did our forefathers do it. So our obligation really is to make sure that our children and future generations also inherit the minerals or their value. I mean, we don't have any special right to consume the minerals. We've inherited the minerals because our forefathers did not consume them. And if we consume them, then what's left for our children? It'll be unfair. Now, this is actually quite familiar in all our Indian families. The idea that anything you inherit, like, if you inherit some jewelry, it's your moral obligation to pass it on to your children or to your nephew, nieces, or whatever. It has to go on to the next generation. So this is the same principle. So principle 3, quite simply we're saying, is that if we are mining is nothing but the sale of our mineral, because after mining we no longer have the mineral, so presumably we've got money for it, and otherwise why do we allow such a thing? So principle 3 is, if we are mining, we must make sure that we get the full value of the mineral. It's like if you sell your gold chain, you will make sure that you get the full price. In the case of minerals, there is a cost of extraction, but every single paisa after that must be received by us. I mean, that's what the government should be doing, right? If you sell a chair, you get the full price. So that's principle 3. Principle 4 is, whatever we receive, we must save in something new for our children, because the minerals they will not inherit. The minerals are gone. So what do you invest it in? Traditionally, we always invested inheritances in either precious stones, diamonds, emeralds and all, precious metals, gold, silver, or land. And the reason it was only these 3 is that any other investment reduces in value over time, and maybe your children will inherit something, but certainly in a few generations, there'll be nothing left. So the same holds true for a building or even a bridge or a car. I mean, it's very obvious that if you put the money in that, over time, nothing's going to be left. Now, in modern times, there's a new instrument which has come up, which is called a permanent fund. The classic example of this is Norway, where they take all the money from their North Sea oil and put it into what they call the Norway Government Pension Fund Global. And it's basically this massive mutual fund for everybody, because the money comes from the mining. But there's one extra proviso in a permanent fund. If you put a certain amount of money into the fund today, if you don't do anything else, 30 years from now, when your children inherit the fund, you cannot buy the same amount with it. So just in practical terms, in Goa, 100 rupees today can get you a fish thali for lunch. 30 years from now, it's obvious that 100 rupees will not get you a fish thali. So the solution really is to make sure that the fund earns income, and to the extent of inflation or price increase, you keep putting the money back into the fund. So what's the point of the fund? The point of the fund is to earn income beyond, and that comes to our fifth principle. The fifth principle is this: we all own the mineral, so we all therefore have owned the fund, because the fund has been created from the money from the mineral. So we all therefore own the income from the fund, because we all own the fund. It's nothing but a cooperative. So our solution is very simple: just take that income beyond inflation and divide it equally by the owners. It's a commons dividend or a citizens dividend. Now, it sounds very simple, but let me explain its importance. Principle 3, we have to get the full value of a mineral. We worked out in Goa over an 8-year period using annual reports, not some GDP numbers which can be manipulated. These are audited financials of the single largest mining company in Goa, Sesa Goa and now Vedanta. We said whatever they can sell the mineral for, we could have sold the mineral for that same amount. Whatever they spent in taking the mineral out, we as owners could have paid them that. Plus, we would have had to pay them a profit, so we added on a 20% after-tax return on assets, which is actually a very high return on assets. But we said if we put it at the correct level of 10 to 12%, we'll have an argument about it. So let's put it at 20%, and it's excessive and very generous. If we had had to pay this amount, every other paisa should have come to us as the owners. So that's very clear. We should have got 100% of the balance. So again, another question for all of you. How much do you think over the 8-year period from 2004 to 2012, of the worth of the minerals, how much do you think the government actually received as an owner? Any guesses as a percentage? Okay, 10% is one bid. Anybody else?
I'm chairing.
There's a 1% guess. Okay, anybody else? But remember, we have to get 100%, right? This is our government. 50. Okay, we got actually less than 5%. And mind you, this is all I'm talking about is legal mining, because this is from annual reports, so we're not talking about black money, over-invoicing, under-invoicing, nothing. This is how the legal system is officially working. Something worth 100 is being given to the miners for 5, and we are losing 95. Well, who got the remaining 95? The mining companies, beyond their normal profit, showed so much extra profit. If you get something worth 100 for 5 and then you go around and sell it for 100, you've shown a profit of 95. So actually, while the state government is constitutionally the owner of the mineral, the center got an additional 35% of the value just from income tax and export duties, and the mining companies made 60% of the value of the mineral. Okay? So this is, and now let me try and explain in quantums what this is worth. Over 8 years, it was 54,000 crores was the amount of the mineral extracted, and the government got 2,500 crores. So we lost 51,500 crores. Okay, so let's just pause it for here and go on to principle 4. We were supposed to have taken even this 2,500 crores and saved it for our children. But the problem we have is government accounting today says any money from minerals is income or revenue or earnings, or even worse, they say it's windfall earnings. It's not. We've just sold our gold. In what way is it an earning? I mean, and let alone a windfall. And the problem with calling it windfall is that you no longer ask the question of, where did this come from? You don't want to really know too much about a windfall, right? You got the windfall and you're happy, and let's not examine it too closely. If you think about how the questions you would ask if it was called a sale of family gold, you'd immediately want to know, what was that I sold? Why did I sell it? Should I have sold it now or waited? Should I have sold it earlier? Did I get the full value? What did I do with the money? Did I save it for my children or did I blow it up? So anyway, the 2,500 crores also got spent. So 54,000 crores gone in 8 years. So 54,000 crores is clearly a loss to children and future generations. They're not going to inherit 54,000 crores. It's gone. Now 54,000 crores, in those 8 years, the state government of Goa's revenues from every single source, including this thing from minerals, they also supply electricity and water in the state, by the way. So this is from everything, was 27,000 crores. Approximately half of the loss of wealth. So imagine if you're running a household and you're getting a basic income of 1,000 rupees a month and you're losing 2,000 rupees of your inheritance every month. I mean, you would be completely stupid to be doing that. But that's how our system is working today, and nobody's saying a word. Okay, let's look at it another way. 27,000 crores is the state government revenue. The mining companies should have made 3,000 crores as normal profit, excessive normal profit, but normal profit. They made an additional 32,000 crores post-tax. That additional 32,000 crores from our children was more than the state government revenues from every single source. So now you know why this has happened. I mean, I don't need to spell it out. Everybody here is an adult. The other way to look at it is, effectively, this is a tax on each one of us. We're all equal owners of the 54,000 crores, as in all of us in Goa. Everybody in the state of Goa in those 8 years lost 3.7 lakhs. I repeat it, 3.7 lakhs per person. 14.5 lakhs a household. NSSO 70th round says Goa's private household assets is 10.5 lakhs. We have lost 14.5 lakhs a household from the commons. The last way to think about it is, suppose we had done what we're saying and we had got this 54,000 crores, put it into a permanent fund and earned just 3% income above inflation. Just for example, Norway over a 20-year period has earned 3.8% income over inflation. So we've taken 3%. Today, every person in the state of Goa would receive a citizen's dividend of 1,000 rupees a month. We should have received a citizen's dividend of 1,000 rupees a month. So when I asked you earlier, would you support a tax of 1,000 rupees a month? I mean, nobody said yes. But that's what everybody in the state of Goa has lost, has been taxed. And this money has gone where? We've gone and made a few people rich. I mean, the miners have become super rich. So we talk about inequality and poverty and all of that, but effectively, this is a huge driver of inequality. There are further things to think about. We've sold mineral worth 100 for 5. Now, if you were on the other side and you had this mining contract, it's clearly legal but illegitimate. It's wrong. What will you do? The rational response is, let me go in, mine, and get out before anybody realizes. And you can see this is what Vedanta is doing, for instance, in Zambia with copper. They went in, mined, said they had no profit, made $1 billion of profit a year, which Anil Agarwal explained to people in Bangalore. and then declared bankruptcy and have left the environment problem in Zambia. So this unfair terms of trade is also driving human rights violation, environment destruction in the mining areas, and many other problems. And eventually it's leading to our conflict, civil war, Naxal problem, and a zillion other things. Now, if you think about what we are proposing, we're effectively saying, what are we saying? The citizens' dividend is actually the key part of what we're trying to talk about. And I should actually mention at this point that Arvind Subramaniam, other than his work on the EPW and Chapter 9 of the Economic Survey, in 2003 wrote a seminal paper on Nigeria's oil problem, as well as on Iraq's oil problem. And I'll just quote, I won't quote exactly from the Nigeria paper, but to understand the problem is a global problem. Nigeria found oil in the mid-50s and started extracting in the mid-60s. Between mid-60s and 2003, when they wrote the paper, Nigeria, for 100 million population, extracted $350 billion of oil. $35,000 of oil they had extracted. Between 1965 and 2003, Nigeria's per capita income had declined. So what did they get for the oil? They got a decline in per capita income. The Niger Delta was completely devastated. There was rampant corruption and a massive civil war. So our strategy here really is, I mean, basic income is a very nice and very positive fallout. But what Arvind Subramaniam actually proposed there, and he's actually written, I mean, he's taken our ideas and put it in chapter 13 of the Economic Survey, is that the citizens' dividend finally links the citizen to the mineral. I mean, all of you are in some state or the other and are owners of some mineral. And really ask yourselves honestly, do you really feel like you own the mineral of your state? You probably don't. I mean, I don't feel like I own the minerals of Goa, even though I'm a proponent of this idea. So the idea of citizens' dividend links the citizen to the mineral. The emphasis on getting the full value of the mineral plus the sort of focus of the people will then start controlling the whole crony capitalism and unfair terms of trade. And the other part is we're also asking for a shift in government accounting of money from mining to say it's not income, but it is the sale of an asset. And it all gets channeled through the permanent fund and the citizens' dividend, so really bypasses the government. So now what we've done is effectively reduce the incentive for the mining company to extract because everybody's watching what they're doing. The government is getting no money because it's all going to the fund and then to the citizens' dividend directly to the people. And it completely changes the way the whole economy, in a sense, works. So this is the basic idea. Now let's talk about political implementability of something like this. And the Goenchi Mati Movement, so this was the work of Goa Foundation. We set up a Goenchi Mati Movement to drive this idea through in Goa. So if you look at what we're saying we own the mineral, so we should own the fund and therefore we should own the dividend. This is absolutely the basic tenets of property rights. Whoever owns the property should continue to own the property. Fair?
No, a bit more. Can you wrap up in a few minutes?
Okay. So it's actually very politically neutral or economic policy neutral across the board. The political economy of something like this, if I can explain, classically in mining, you may have 10% of the population saying, I want mining because I'm a miner or I'm a truck owner. On the other hand, you may have 10% of the population saying, I don't want the mine because it's in front of my face or an environmentalist. And a lot of people like us are saying we want Vikas and development requires cars and phones, which require minerals. So our point is we're not saying stop mining. We're saying let's continue to do mining, but are you willing to suffer this kind of a loss for it? Why don't we just do mining in a slightly different way where the people benefit as opposed to the miners? So this should be able to drive a fairly broad political consensus, except the top rungs of the political parties who depend on crony capitalist funding. So this is what we are talking about. but the principles can obviously be extended to all kinds of natural resources and to all kinds of commons. And there are a bunch of movements going around the world with very interesting similar kinds of strategies. So there's a whole set of movements going around on carbon tax plus dividend. The idea of taxing consumption of stuff which makes the planet go warmer and paying it out as a dividend to the same population. So California, if you think about it, the carbon tax will be paid most by the rich and the industries. The dividend will be received by everybody, and clearly the poor will have a net benefit. So the poor finally will be saying, let's increase the carbon tax rather than reduce the carbon tax. And clearly if we increase the carbon tax, we're going to reduce carbon consumption, emissions, and we're starting to save the planet. A different way to do this is the idea sort of from Henry George way back about 120 years ago, and it's something which could be implemented in India, is the idea of putting a property tax. Why is property in Bombay so valuable? It's not because of anybody in Bombay in particular. It's because the whole city has developed, which is a contribution of society. Now, in most advanced economies, you are charged a property tax of 1 to 2% of the value of your property as a compensation for this. So consider a structure where you charge a 1 to 2% of the property tax and you dividend it out also. So let's take a village for a simple or a small mohalla. The really rich guys are going to pay a huge amount of property tax, but everybody in the village is going to get the dividend. Guess who's going to ask for a higher property tax? Everybody. What does it do to land values? Land values start coming down and equalize. And one of the big constraints in our economy today is that the cost of land is so high, it's a big problem in the economy. It prevents it from running forward. The funds in the permanent fund are perpetual funds, perfect for infrastructure financing. We are looking for FDI for infrastructure, and we have so much needs. So this basically, as a proposition, can potentially change many things. I got involved with INBI because of the Citizens Dividend. Mines, Minerals and People is an all-India alliance of mining groups, and we've already launched a petition to implement these ideas for minerals across the country. Please support us. And our global movement is the future we need, where we're looking to implement these principles not just in minerals but across all natural resources, because we work through the theory, we're fundamentally shifting the frame of thinking from individualism to community, and from consumption of the planet to safeguarding the planet for the future. And only if we do this are we going to be able to avert both the environment disaster we have and the economic disaster we have. Thanks.
Thank you.